we are with the fire station number 2, and then go over the budget report as we stand now. So the overall project process, as we talked about it before, we are doing a design build process. We have David from my office here, and then we have Mike Gagne, who is representing the builder from Frankfurt Walden Sons here as well. We wanted to update you on the overall project process. Last time we stood in front of you, we were talking about bringing you a GMP at this meeting, and we are going to be shifting that a little bit based on market response because of the unique times that we're in. We're still going to be guaranteeing that maximum price, and we are working within the current set budget, but we are shifting things in order to keep up with lead times. We are also responding to kind of the unknowns that are going on right now. So what we're showing is that we've been checking off the next box of refining and developing the project expectations and requirements. That's both for the CCC and the fire station. Right now, the CCC is a little further ahead in the process than we were with the fire station. But the new thing that we want to bring to you is an early release package and a budget update. So what we're planning to do is come back to you in both of the February meetings to talk about early releases. The reason why we're doing this is because the lead times on some very specific items are so long that in order to maintain the project schedule that we set early on, we have to release these and get in line and order these things now. So the first early release package that we're going to give you is the HVAC, which is going to be your big pieces of equipment. And then we're going to get that, at that point it will be an approval that we would move forward with ordering that information along with another budget update based on what came in with those subcontractor bids when we do the HVAC, because it will be a competitive bidding for just that early release package. And then we're going to do the same thing again with the roof and roof decking. That'll be the second one that we come to, and I'll kind of get into the schedule. But that's unique to this new project process. And then from there, what we're doing is kind of shifting things to better the overall intention of the scope to include more into it. We are going to be completing the construction documents and going to competitive bidding, and then coming back to you with those, the remaining items. So once we have the first 2 early release packages, we're going to come back to you in April with the final, and that would be showing you how the competitive bidding came in for the rest of the project. And we're doing a lot of those because of the market fluctuations and the unknowns. And I'm sure a lot of people have kind of heard what's going on, but if there are any questions, please feel free to kind of jump in at this point. We have Mike that can kind of answer any of those. I'm sure he's been repeating that throughout to everybody. But that's our intention. And then from there, we would continue on with the construction. I do have a schedule slide that's next, so I was going to talk more in depth about the actual dates, but is anything that I'm showing here you have any questions about? Okay. So the project schedule, kind of looking at it from the CCC and the project and then the fire station, in the end, they're all going to catch up to one another and have the same project bidding in April, and then we would come to you with both of those projects and then what we would do is kind of stagger the construction based on the start date. So from the beginning, today's meeting is the first line item. Sorry, it's kind of small. The next process or the next ribbon that we're moving through is that CCC early release package. So that's the ERP that we're going to be sending out to get competitively bid by January 19th. And then we expect those bid results back on the 31st. And then that would be in time to get it prepped and ready, reviewed, and sent to you for your packages to be ready to participate in the February 14th meeting. At the same time, we would also be, before we come to council at 14th, sorry, they kind of like overlap, but we would also be bidding the early release package number 2 in order to be aligned with your February 28th meeting. So they kind of overlap, but the intention and the process is the same. So we're going to be finalizing those early release, sending it out to a 2-week bid to get competitively bid, and then coming to you consecutive meetings in February.
I have a question.
Sure.
So we talked about, you said the competitive wage, we talked about possibly, well, what I would hope, to get the union prevailing wage. Well, where are we at on that?
Right now, we are not including prevailing wage. That doesn't limit, and correct me if I'm wrong on that. Okay. We're not including it right now. That doesn't mean that we would limit that as an opportunity, but it's not a set only parameter.
How can we get it a set only? I mean, that's up to us, correct?
Yep.
So how do we proceed to talk about, debate that?
Is that something that we need to direct you to, if that's something we want to do, or is that something that when you come back with the bids, we ask?
No, that would be before, and
Okay.
we have had internal discussions about it. There are, and I guess I don't want to speak wrong, but my yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, can you come, we can't hear you from over there. We can hear you, but they can't catch it.
Sorry, Mike Gagne with Frank Rewald. That's really a bidding requirement. So as far as the process, it really doesn't make any difference at this time where that is. If it is something, I'll call it, there's a lot of different bidding requirements, right? The city may have procurement issues, like, we deal with many different municipalities. So your procurement requirements and stuff, we will incorporate into the bid packages, right? Into the bid documents. So if this is something that you direct us to do, we would just incorporate that right into the bid packages. So there's numerous options, right? The city probably has their own procurement rules and regulations and how they do that. So we would be following all of those and then plug those into the bid documents.
Right, no, I get that part, but what time frame are we talking about? How long do we have to make that decision?
Basically, the first package is going out in January 19th, January 20th, right then. So between now and, the 18th of January is when we would need to know if that was a requirement for the bid packages.
Could you talk about packages that you do include that requirement in, maybe what it does to the budget, or do you know, like, what could we anticipate since our budget's so tight?
The state pulled back the prevailing wage laws, I don't know, a couple years ago now, and so we have not done any of those recently.
I'm sorry, excuse me, you said the state. What do you mean by the state?
So for any state-funded projects, they used to have the prevailing wage laws, and the state eliminated that. So there are no state prevailing wages anymore.
Was that because of the House and the Senate voted on that, or who made that decision?
Yeah, it was. It was a law that was passed, and I don't know the
Republican,
timing of
right.
that, but so there are no more state prevailing wages. There are federal prevailing wages, but no more state prevailing wages at this point.
Requirement.
Correct.
But
and because there's no
choose.
requirement, the state does not keep up prevailing wages, right? They don't. They used to publish the prevailing wages all the time, but they don't do that anymore. The only prevailing wages you have are federal prevailing wages.
Well, same one and the same.
It's just, it's a different organization that publishes what they are, or, requirements.
Would they be more market?
Yeah, I mean, the federal prevailing wages are based on different localities, right? So there's a different federal prevailing wage for Metro Detroit, one for Lansing area, one for Grand Rapids, one, for all over the country. They're just different. It's a publicized rate that they issue.
And so the date that we have to notify you is by when?
18th.
It's probably, the other thing is I haven't went to, it's part of the Davis-Bacon. I don't know, we haven't done these in a number of years now, so I don't know how long it takes. They have to issue a published rate. They issue it out. You have to request it for a given project, and then they will send you those rates. So I don't know their time frame for doing that at this point. I haven't done it in some time, so I don't know their requirements for issuing those rates. Now, it'll be easier. Like our first bid package is only one trade, right? So we don't need to get all the trades because it only involves one trade. And then the second bid package involves a couple trades. So again, we would only have to get those published rates for those trades. And then the final bidding will be in April when we'd have to have the rates for all the trades. So that?
That means no competitive bidding.
No, it's all competitive bidding. Yeah, it's just everybody who's bidding it has to use those rates. So, they're not union rates. They are kind of based on union rates, but they're not necessarily union rates. They're a published, by the, they're different rates because the state published a different rate than the federal government did. So it's not, they do their own calculations on how they determine what those rates need to be, and they issue a paper and then you follow it. So there's a number of different things about the prevailing wages. People think, right, that what it does is it takes, it does not mean you have to be union by any means. So that's a whole different animal. If you
Right.
want things to be union, that's not prevailing wage. That's a union requirement. So those are two different things. Prevailing wages, it just means that you have to pay your people that rate, right? So a lot of times people think that that means that you're going to get better companies that pay higher wages, but the reality is you can get the same company that pays lower wages, but on that job they have to pay higher wages, right? They just pay their people more for that project because it's a prevailing wage. So union is different than prevailing wages, if that makes sense.
Different people would be interested in the project based on that environment.
Yes, for sure. Yes. Union companies would be more interested in it because the prevailing wages, they're more competitive with prevailing wages. They're not the same, but they're more.
Okay, so I think this is important to some of us, that we want to make sure that we're hiring, not necessarily union, but people that are getting a proper wage, and everybody knows what's going on with the need for tradespeople. So part of the prevailing wage is making sure that that they've got apprentices and that they're getting properly trained. But I don't know that this is the setting to get into an in-depth conversation about it.
No, I
So-
agree. I just wanted to know
Yeah.
when.
No,
when-
but
And I don't know how long
You
to
got a
get
month.
a prevailing wage, what the requirement is right now. We can find that out. I don't know.
Okay.
You know, if it's a week's time, we can just request it and get it within a week. But if it's a month, we'd have to know that ahead of time to request that. I don't know the time frame for that off the top of my head.
And Your Honor, is there a way to bid the project with, I don't know even how to say, but with
Sure.
both, so we could see what the cost would be for one, and then what the cost would be if we didn't have this requirement? Do you know what I'm trying to say? Just because
Yeah.
our budget's so tight, and if we end up being over the 12.6, the project's not gonna happen at all. So I guess if you understand what I'm trying to say, is there a way to bid it both ways so council could see both ways without making it just a strict requirement, and that's the only thing that we see? Or,
Theoretically, that can be done. It's difficult, though,
you got two.
in the eyes of the bidders, right? And one of the things right now in today's market, getting bidders is a very tough thing. People are very busy, people are short on staff. The marketplace, they're very worried about material deliveries and the responsibilities they have with that. They don't know. So it's for bidders, it's a very scary market right now. So when you would say, if you said this has to be union, or you say, okay, bid it this way or bid it that way, it's an impediment to bidding, and so people will not bid because they can go do their stuff other places. Everything we try to do in the market now is try to make it easy for people to bid. At that point, you can make any decisions you want to, right? There's no requirement that you take the low bidder. You can, for whatever reasons, you have, we publish that in our bid documents that you have the right to make the choices, what's in your best interest. So you will get, without saying anything, you will get union, non-union bids. What you will probably not get is non-union bidders that would pay more to meet a prevailing wage.
Okay, let me ask you this. When we get the bids, can it just be one of the questions that's asked? Are you paying prevailing wage?
Well,
Yes, no?
no, you can't ask that question because
Okay.
you can ask them, are you union or non-union? If you ask them if you want to pay prevailing wages, you have to publicize what those prevailing wages are and ask them to bid those prevailing wages. They don't know what the prevailing wage is, you just can't ask them because you have to publicize that. But you could ask them if they're union or non-union.
Right, so I remember when we talked about this earlier, we mentioned labor, not necessarily prevailing wage, from what I understand. And so if 12.6 is a hard stop, I'm a little disappointed that we didn't calculate what a union wage would be to see if we would make it or not.
So that's also very difficult from the standpoint that when we're putting these budgets together, you cannot, we're not doing anything on this many hours times this rate, right? We're taking square foot costs, which are an average, some union, some non-union, all of that. So you can't look at every single line item and say, if it's bid, your union guy could come in at this number, and a non-union guy might be even more than a union guy. There's just so we're taking average cost and historical cost data to provide this budget. So it's not the budget is not based on union or non-union, because union contractors will bid lower than non-union, non-union will bid higher than union. It just depends on so many other things than just what the rate is. There's material costs come in play. Are they busy? Are they not busy? Does this fit their schedule? Does this not fit their schedule? There's just so many things that come into the final bids. When you get down to it, on bid day, and we'll show you all the bids. There'll be a bid for something as simple as concrete, which you can calculate exactly how many yards of concrete there are, and those bids are going to be 20% different, right, from the low to the high. The low guy could be union, the high guy could be non, or it could be reversed, but it just depends on so many other factors to get those numbers. And we don't look at them when we're doing the budgets. We're trying to pick a middle of the road. So some bids are going to be lower than our budget, and some are going to be higher. But at the end of the day, the total cost should be there. I don't know if that answered your question. I hope, but
Not really. So I don't, so I just want to know what it takes or what we have to do to make a decision whether we want union labor or not.
all I can tell you is that if you put a requirement for union labor, in general, your costs are going to be higher. How much higher, I can't tell you.
That's fine.
Because what it does is the union guys now know that they're not competing against non-union, so they don't go get target monies, they don't go and get other things that allow them to compete against non-unions. Plus, they know their competition now they're not looking necessarily for how to do this better, because they know who they're competing against. Every union glass guy knows the other union glass guys, right? They know what they're paying, they know how they work, they're all. So, in general, your costs go up. But I could never define an exact amount, how much that goes up.
Yeah, but you can also say that about private industry, right? They know each other, they know what they're gonna, it's the same deal.
Well, absolutely. If you have 3 competitors, yeah, you're knowing what's going on. There's
Okay.
50
So-
glass companies in this area, and probably 10 of them are union.
Okay,
Right.
so I think,
So
I
that's how-
appreciate the explanation. I think that we're getting way off topic here.
Wow.
So,
That's what we do here.
Yeah,
well, we have a time limit, because we've got council after this. So,
Your Honor, could I just want to be very clear that at some point in real time, I'd like to have an opportunity to have this discussion.
yes,
Minus the theoretical and minus the,
I agree.
yeah.
No, I agree.
In a respectable time.
And
I
that's,
don't care how it's arranged.
yeah, that's fine. Our next council meeting is January 10th, I think, and then you're saying that this is due on the 18th?
Yeah, so, I mean, in the meantime, we can request prevailing wages, so
Perfect.
I can know what they are, you know, we can get the paperwork from them to include in the bid documents. We don't have to include them in the bid documents, but we can, you know, we can get the information. I think January 8th is the day that things are going out on the streets, so we would need, like, by January 16th, we'd need to know the information we have to insert in that document to go out on the streets.
Okay. If
Your
you
Honor?
could send it to us, then we can probably take a look. Yep.
Yeah, my only comment on this is, you know, we do have a fiduciary duty to our residents as well. And so this sounds like a very complex issue. You know, we've spent the last 10 minutes understanding how complex it is. So my personal leanings would say, let's include in the bid, you know, Governor Whitmer announced the state of Michigan required prevailing wage in October. So all state contracts require it. So what, we could put a question in the bid, something to the effect of, would you qualify to bid on a state contract or something like, I don't know what the answer is, but let's find out if they would qualify on that, and let's find out if they're union. And then when we get the bids in, we can make a decision based on cost, based on union, based on prevailing wage, all of that, because it'll come back to us. Because the worst two things that'll happen is either we only get a couple bids and they're way more than what we can afford to do this project, or we don't get anything that is union or prevailing wage. And I don't want to do either of those things. So is there a way that we can just push out the bid with those types of questions in it? And then when we get the bids in, we can, you know, from the RFP say, this is the most highest qualified bidder for cost, wages, quality, all those things combined?
I don't want to give you an answer now because there's legitimate questions. Again, the bidding market, you ask questions. So is there a way that we can frame that so that we can ask the question later without them being afraid to bid up front? That would be the ideal situation. And so I don't know the answer to that question off the top of my head.
Well, I'll trust you on the language, and I'm sure staff can be in touch. I just don't want to have to worry about a January 10th council meeting for us to debate this, and then it doesn't get into a bid, or we're late in the RFP, or I don't know. I would much rather have, and this is my personal opinion, let's just get as many bids as we can with as much of this information as you can provide us, and then we can make a better decision at that point. That's my personal thought.
And
I agree.
I understand what you're asking. I just don't know the best way to go about that at this point. But I understand we
Okay.
can think about that and give you some thoughts. And I don't know exactly how that would look right now, but I'm sure it could be done.
Okay. Then we'll leave you to, you've got an idea what we're thinking here. We want to do the project, but we need to come in with the budget. So, move on. Is that okay? Can we move on?
No.
All right.
Thank you.
So I left off with the 2 council meetings. We'll be bringing the first early release package, which is HVAC and in the units that have there. So it's mostly equipment in order to get in line and get those ordered so that we can have them delivered by October is the goal. So we're looking back on lead times on that. And then the second one is and the elevator's included in the first one as well. And then the second early release package is the roof framing and decking that's going there. So we're going to be sending out to bid some of the structure and the roofing because the roof deck and the rigid insulation is a long lead item, and so we're trying to get that delivered per our schedule to keep us on the overall. So from there, we would then, from the February meetings through April, or through March really, we would be completing the construction documents, and then we would be sending those to bid come April 1st. So that would be all of the remaining information. Would be sending it out to bid to come to council for a final approval for the GMP on May 9th, and that would be for both the CCC and the fire station. And I won't go back through all of the fire station because it's relatively moving at the same pace, except for in between the February 28th and the April 1st, we're going to get caught up on the construction documents. So everything will get caught up there. So each time we come to council, we'll bring you a little bit more information on the fire department based on the budget that we're working with. And some of those bid packs and those information that's coming in on those long lead items will help us understand the market and keep defining that budget. Finally, the ground break for CCC would be June 22nd, with the fire station soon to follow in August. And the intention, obviously, is to get enclosed before the winter months provide any sort of winter conditions. So I wanted to show you an update to the Civic Center campus. So I'm going to start with the site plan. Generally, it looks the same. We have, obviously, our 3 buildings that we are, well, 2 buildings that are existing and we're connecting with the 3rd. So generally, all of that has remained the same. There's little things on the site that we were looking at for kind of a value planning, knowing that where we were in our budget early on was about 14 and knowing about 14 million. So in order to pull that back and fit within the budget, we were working on, that was our assessment number. Sorry, that was just our assessment number. Then we started looking at the site a little differently. Where could we do things to still meet the scope and the needs, but do it a little differently? And so we are still providing the 2 bus routes. We're pulling the coach, the motor coach that would be doing the AAC long trips. We still have it in the same area, trying to pull some of those parking away from the main areas, and then also providing that pull-off for and that's right up in the upper left-hand corner. But we're just doing it differently. At first, we were rearranging all of those curbing and doing a lot of work in that area, and now we're kind of showing it with striping. So we're still providing that as a service and as a safety precaution to the overall site plan, but we're just doing it a little differently to save on cost so that we can apply that cost into other parts of the scope. And so generally it looks the same. Down on the south side, we had a little bit larger kind of turnabout, but this is a 2-lane road currently that we would make it a single lane. So we would have enough area to be able to have the AAC members pull off to the side to participate in the programs that they offer for the medical equipment that gets borrowed, any of the food distribution that goes on, that's all in there as well. So that's all being met. We're just doing it a little differently by keeping the same paving and the concrete as much as possible. We are still including the library drive-through, so we do have to adjust the curbing and the parking for that, or the sidewalk for that. So here's the floor plan. Again, generally it looks the same and it's still functioning the same. We're providing a lot of the same areas, including a walking path, which maybe it's a little hard to see here, but we are providing a walking path with connecting the hallways. We're just doing it a little differently on the south side. Initially, you would come out of the existing perimeter, so kind of out to the south side, right outside these windows. And we looked at that as kind of square footage that could be used or could be cut back. So we're still providing the walkway and the circulation path, but we're doing it within the existing footprint and part of the new addition. So I'm just going to show quickly the different areas. So I'm putting a box around the upper corner as my city hall, a box around the AAC, and then the library. And so to blow those up, the floor plan for City Hall, we've kind of zigged and zagged, but the L-shaped City Hall is still the same. So from the upper left-hand corner down and around, we still have a secured staff area that separates itself from the public. The only area that would be used from the public standpoint would be if someone wanted to use the microfiche, they would be let into the community development area to use that. But it's a very specific kind of limited access, and we wanted to create that safety and security for the staff. From there, the conference room and the team room, those are areas that can be used. The team room is set for the community development right now because they need to be able to sit down and talk about building plans and that kind of thing. So that's kind of a room outside of their staff area that they can meet with the public. The council chamber, instead of taking it from this room, we would be moving it to kind of where city clerk is now, and in the rearrangement of the furniture, kind of maximizing that design in that room. And I think we still fit, between 40 and 50 people in there, in that space, along with the same setup that you currently have with the dais. And there's adjacent conference room, which is a nice bonus that isn't in this location. From there, we have the existing executive conference room that would remain the same. And then we have the existing men's and women's restroom that we're looking at updating the finishes on that and including an extra toilet or stall in the women's bathroom. The Madison room is currently going to stay its 4 walls that it is, but it will be designated to the Community Coalition and the Chamber of Commerce.
Got a question?
Sure.
So the city manager's office doesn't only have a door, outside door like it does now?
To the exterior?
Yeah.
No, but what we are doing, and I guess it's not actually showing there right now, but there is a door that leads from the city manager's office. It didn't make it into this plan for some reason, but there is a door that leads from into the staff area. So they can access the west exit as a safety precaution or as like kind of a staff parking on the west side is kind of what we're designating. And they can still access it without going into the public areas.
Yeah, the reason I ask is that sometimes, at least myself, come on the weekends and then I go through that door. Now, what would I do?
Are you looking to access the mailboxes?
No, like we have a room with our,
Yes,
yeah.
Yeah.
yes, they come in
The
on the
mailboxes,
weekends
yeah.
and at night to go to what you're calling the mailboxes, yeah.
Okay, so those are now going to be shifted off the mailroom. So those would be accessed through the mailroom here, and they're actually on the back side of that mailroom.
Right, so how do I get there after hours?
We can talk about access, but there can be, maybe the west end still has a staff entrance, and you could come in through that way and then exit out through the treasury or finance or go up to community development. I actually haven't been challenged with the after hours. The front and back doors to the north and south could also have an after hours access that we could build into the locking system, whether it's a code or something like that we could build into the hardware, because we're going to be updating those doors and all the storefronts around the entire building. So we could build that into like the north entrance if that makes the most sense to access those in the.
There just needs to be something so that if we come on the weekends or after hours when there's nobody here,
Absolutely, right.
we
Okay.
can get in. We don't need access to the entire campus. We just need access to a small
Okay.
chambers probably, because if we're here for a wedding or something.
I think we can build that into
Okay.
the door hardware very easily.
Okay.
And there's no alarm systems that sensors that go off? I mean, if we have to unlock the door, that's the security system, right?
Right, so if there was like a punch code or something, then that code wouldn't set the alarm off because it would be something
Right, I'm
that's
just saying
pretty.
if you're walking through if we have to walk through the entire.
Oh.
Without setting off alarms.
So, sorry, the ACC, the Active Adult Center, right now, I think this has been adjusted. We had a conversation about the levels and how we are 3 feet up 3.5 feet in this exact room and 4 feet approximately when you get over to City Hall. But the library is actually at grade. So we're connecting the two buildings, and at first we were going to provide sloped ramps throughout the hallway, but that has been shifted. We're not doing that. That was not the way we wanted to do it. So what we're actually doing is around the lobby, the staff and the Breckenridge is actually at the same level as the library. So you enter in from grade into the AAC, and then you can see that there's some steps or a ramp, an interior ramp to get you up to what we're calling the fireside room, and then the rest of the program space. So that provides no, actual door connection between the Breckenridge room and the rest of the hallway, but the staff does have a back entry with some stairs.
And the ramp is the grade that they requested?
So the interior ramp off the vestibule and up to the fireside room is just a regular ADA ramp, and that was what was requested because they said that they want to know they're on a ramp. When they know they're on a ramp, then they can make the adjustments, and they are, from start to finish, it's very designated. They were worried that if something wasn't so obvious, that it might be something that they're not seeing that they wouldn't comprehend it. So putting it into an exact like interior ADA, even though it's a steeper slope, it's still a very defined start and stop, and that was preferred. So from there, the library, there has been some staff adjustments in here. Generally, the adult stacks, the teen room, and the children's room are all what we saw before. So the old Breckenridge room is going to turn into the teen space, and then the Breckenridge room is going to go just to the north of the library and still have a shared access there. What has adjusted from this plan? The circulation desk. We started diving in a little bit more with how the staff utilizes these spaces, and they decided that the circulation desk right at the entry made the most sense and not blocking the overall view. So initially we did have it up front as a desk, but we didn't have an office with it, and it also kind of blocked the view into the rest of the library. So now it's off to the side. You still have a very apparent start and stop desk when you enter, but you can still see everything, which is kind of opens it up a little bit more. And there's an office that's attached. The children's area, we've adjusted the staff areas so that it best accommodates both the staff and being able to keep your eyes on the children when you're in that space. So the way we did that was put an alcove off the children's room, but a door access into the actual staff area, which is the green space. And that kind of was the best of both worlds, being able to interact with the staff when they needed to and readily available, but still having that visual connection to, keep an eye on things there.
Question, do you have the details on the children's room, what the flooring is going to be?
Not yet. We're just getting into like interior finishes. Most likely it's going to be carpet, but we're working on, kind of making it a nice, fun, bright, interactive space, and trying to make it flexible too.
Yeah, I'm not sure about carpet for my 2 cents.
Yeah.
Or the foam.
Some sort of foam, that could be better. Especially, they are sitting there, so that makes sense. So the exterior, we have generally the same footprint. We've kind of straightened out some of the curves, and then we've introduced canopies at each one of the main entrances. And I can kind of zoom in here too. Kind of having that designated area very clearly defined, that when you're standing in the parking lot and you're wondering where you're going, that it's very obvious that you have the Active Adult Center, you have the library, and you have the City Hall. And so we would have those kind of columns, I guess, be designating the entry and be bright in color, and then also have the signage, so very large signage so that it would be easy to read from the area. So the rest of the building kind of is cohesive, but then those very distinct entrances. And that's kind of a different view of the City Hall. So we're adding a canopy at the City Hall, and we're kind of straightening out so you have an actual ADA entrance into this north area. It is with a sloped sidewalk, not a ramp. So you have the stairs that would remain, and then the overhang that we would add, and then this sloped sidewalk to get up to it. So Fire Station 2, any questions on the CCC?
The Veterans Memorial, is that going to stay there?
They have them over at the ACC or AAC.
There's no changes planned for that area.
Yeah, no changes out here currently. Yep. Oh, yes, I know what you're talking about. Sorry. Yeah, no changes to that. Fire Station number 2, where we are with that. So last time we came and talked to you about where we were talking about a CIP or a campus improvement plan, or a renovation or a new build. And these were the plans that we showed you before. We were going to look at, in keeping some of the existing or potentially building new. And we really wanted to try to push this new build, but really the budget was kind of what is driving our current efforts. And so where we were with the CIP was at 2.4 over 10 years. So you're just kind of applying those Band-Aids to the building. The renovation, in addition, the way we mapped it out for the assessment was about 3.35 or 4. The new build was, up in that 4.2. So based on the budget right now, we're calling this a remodel effort where we're going to prioritize the needs, and we're going to make this all come in at 1.5. So we're working with the department right now to define that priority and build it into the budget. So part of those needs, number one is that bay, the apparatus bay. We just don't have our clearances, we don't have our heights, we don't have our widths between the trucks, and if they get a new truck, the new ladder just really won't fit into that. The second part of that, or kind of the first, I don't know if you've ever seen those trucks out on the apron. They're about an inch from John R. So that means they're completely blocking the sidewalk. They are really getting so close to John R. So there's just not, and they pull them out for maintenance. They'll pull them out to clean the trucks. So there's reasons to have those aprons be allotting the full truck. So the number one goal is to rebuild the apparatus bay. And then the next one would be addressing the multi-toilet restroom, which it's a single restroom with multiple, it has a toilet and a urinal, and it really does, it's not conducive for multiple genders, obviously. So we're trying to go towards single-use occupant restrooms that would have their showers in it. And then the decontamination, so that's a health and safety thing where when they get back from a call, they want to include the decon. From there, the day room is kind of too small and the sight lines aren't really conducive to great camaraderie. So we're going to try to address that. And then the locker rooms really need to have more space for personal lockers and the size of staff. Lastly, the fitness room, I don't know if anybody's been in there, but it's the old City Hall area, and it's got low ceilings and doesn't offer much for the ability to do different exercises. It's pretty small. So we're looking to prioritize this list and then kind of just keep working with Mike and Mike's team and build in these budgets and make these updates. So where we are currently, and David, I can present this. So where we are currently is a City Hall is coming from, working with what we know now in the design that we've been updating. The City Hall is about 3.7. Active Adult Center is looking like 3.9. The library, about 1.0. And then we have site work, so we've allotted 1.1 for site and repaving because we know we have some, even to the north, like up near the fire station, that needs to be addressed as well. So in total, right now, we're budgeting 10.7 for City Hall, or for the CCC project, which is what we're getting the 1.585 for the fire station. So these numbers will continue to be refined through that early bid release, and we'll keep bringing these updates to you to help us see where the fire station lands and make those adjustments as we go. Any other comments on that? Okay.
Your Honor?
Please, go ahead.
Can we just, as a reminder to the public who might be watching or is here with us today, could you give the estimate for what this, or for what the cost would have been doing the repairs and all of the scheduled maintenance? Because they're just seeing some of these big numbers, and I want to make sure there's some context there.
Yeah, so what we were originally, and I can pull open the other presentation that we gave, which was the kind of the CIP for CCC, and in total, when we got done with the assessment, so the 1.5 phase, and we got done with the fire station assessment, and we did some schematic designs with that, the total package for both was about $14 million. And it was a little over $14 million in total. So working with the 12.3, we want to deliver the same scope. We're just looking at it a little differently. So we're looking at, the construction methods, the lead times, whether it's masonry bearing or steel, those could have cost and lead time implications. And so would you like me to pull up the other presentation?
Just as a reference point, I think every time that we talk about this, we should probably point out what we would have spent if we weren't doing this project, because that's pretty significant amount of money.
Right.
And I definitely want our residents to know that this is actually the most cost-effective and financially responsible thing to do, even though they are large numbers.
Right, and the other thing about that too is that it would be the way we presented it for the CIP, which was just maintenance costs basically, or maintenance and some maybe minor renovations here and there, is it would have been 10 years, like the way we kind of mapped it out. So this is how to get multiple departments operating where they should be now.
Your Honor?
Yep.
So I trust that you're working with Chief Lolito on his input, right?
Yes, correct. Yep. We had a couple of meetings. In fact, I have another one on Thursday.
Any other questions by council, I think? All right, thank you for that. Thank you, everyone, for being here. That is the only item on the agenda. So I'm going to adjourn this meeting. The time is 7:18. Thank you.